Every cursed object in Greek myth started the same way, as a gift, a necklace, an apple, a wand, each one beautiful, each one given by someone who knew exactly what it would do. Tonight, 7 treasures, 7 ruined bloodlines, and the god who never really needed a curse, just a willing hand. You are the last woman to wear it, and you don't know that yet. The necklace is gold, 2 serpents coiled into a clasp around a single stone, and it has never once looked like a warning. Hephaestus made it 3,000 years before you were born. Not as a wedding gift, though that is what he called it. He made it because his wife Aphrodite had shared her bed with Ares, and shame like that does not fade quietly for a god of fire. So, when their daughter Harmonia married the founder of Thebes, Hephaestus gave the bride a gift laced with grief he could not put down. Beautiful, eternal, ruinous. Harmonia's own daughter Semele wore it first, and it was in her hands the night she begged to see Zeus in his true divine form. A request that left nothing of her behind but light and ash. Generations later, so the old accounts hint, the necklace passed through the halls of Thebes into the keeping of a queen who did not know the man she married was her own son. Then it found Eriphyle, who traded her husband's life for the necklace's gleam. She sent him to a war she knew would not let him come home, and her own son later made sure she did not outlive that choice. Now you are wearing it. You found it, or it found you. The old stories never agree on which. You have heard the warnings. You are wearing it anyway. That has always been the real curse, not the gold, not the serpents. The fact that everyone who ever held it knew exactly what it had done to the last person who wore it, and reached for it anyway. From a necklace passed hand to hand for generations, to something small enough to hold in one palm, and somehow just as destructive. Eris was the goddess of discord, and the gods did the one thing guaranteed to summon her. They left her off the guest list. At the wedding of Peleus and Thetis, uninvited and furious, she threw a golden apple, pulled from the garden of the Hesperides, into the middle of the feast. 3 words were carved into it, "To the fairest." She did not say who that was. She did not have to. Hera, Athena, and Aphrodite each decided the apple belonged to her. Not one of them considered putting it down. Zeus, wise enough to know a losing question when he heard one, refused to judge and handed the decision to a shepherd prince named Paris. Each goddess offered him something. Hera offered power. Athena offered wisdom and victory in battle. Aphrodite offered the most beautiful woman alive. Paris chose the woman. Her name was Helen, and she was already married to a Greek king. 10 years of war followed. A city burned. And history remembers one name above all others, Eris, the goddess who supposedly ruined a wedding out of spite. But was she really the one who couldn't let it go? Some of the oldest fragments describing that night never even mention an apple at all. Just 3 goddesses who could not stop arguing over which of them deserved to be first. The apple may be a detail added later to give the discord somewhere to land. Eris only threw it. Everyone else is the reason it never stopped rolling. Like those 3 goddesses, the next name on this list also refused to let something go, and it cost him everything. Achilles was dead, and his armor, they forged for him by Hephaestus himself, was still standing on the shore of Troy, waiting for someone worthy to claim it. 2 men believed that was them. Ajax, the strongest warrior left among the Greeks, related to Achilles by blood and second to him in nearly every battle fought at Troy. And Odysseus, quicker with words than with a spear, already known for winning through cleverness rather than strength. The Achaean leaders held a contest, not of arms, of arguments. Each man stood before the assembly and made his case for why the armor belonged to him. Ajax spoke of blood ties and battlefield wounds. Odysseus spoke of cunning, of strategy, of wars won with a mind instead of a sword. The leaders chose Odysseus. For Ajax, that verdict was not simply a loss, it was an accusation that everything he had given at Troy counted for less than a well-placed argument. Shame took a shape he could not carry. Athena, some accounts say, pushed that shame into something closer to madness, and in the dark, Ajax turned his rage on a herd of cattle, believing them to be the very men who had judged him unworthy. When morning came and he understood what he had done, there was no argument left to make. He took the one thing no vote could ever take from him, his own sword, the same blade Hector had once given him as a battlefield gift, and made certain that no one, not even Odysseus, would ever again decide what he was worth. He was never bested in combat. He was undone entirely by his own certainty that the armor belonging to him was not a question. It was owed. If one man's pride could destroy him this completely, imagine what a single piece of that same pride, planted inside all of humanity, could do. You are the first woman ever made, and you don't know yet that you were built as a punishment. Prometheus stole fire from the gods and gave it to mankind, and Zeus wanted mankind to pay for that gift. So he had Hephaestus shape you from clay and breath, beautiful beyond anything the gods had made before, and sent you down to the man who would become your husband, with a jar tucked carefully into your hands. No one told you what was inside, only that it must never be opened. You didn't ask to be a punishment. You didn't ask for the curiosity that came bundled with everything else the gods gave you. But the jar sat there day after day, and the not knowing became heavier than the warning. So you opened it. Everything the gods had ever wanted to unleash on mankind came pouring out at once. Sickness, grief, hard labor, old age, spreading into the world in a single breath, never to be called back again. By the time you understood what you had done, the lid was already closed on nothing but silence. Except for one thing that never made it out. Hope stayed behind, trapped inside with the rest, and no one has ever agreed on whether that was mercy or the cruelest part of the entire design. History remembers your name as the woman who ruined everything. It rarely mentions that you were built to want that jar open more than anything else in the world, because the God who made you needed someone to blame, and curiosity like that was never really yours to control. If one jar could undo all of mankind, one statue, small enough to carry in 2 arms, was enough to undo an entire city. Everyone remembers how Troy fell. A wooden horse dragged through the gates by a city that should have known better. That is the story told at every campfire since. But Troy was already unprotected long before that horse ever crossed the walls. Inside the temple of Athena stood the Palladium, a wooden statue of the goddess herself, said to have fallen from the sky generations earlier as a gift to the city's founder. As long as it remained inside Troy's walls, the prophecy held, the city could not be taken. The Greeks did not know this until Helenus, a son of Priam captured during the siege, revealed the secret meant to protect his own home. Troy would only fall, he told them, if the Palladium was gone. So 2 men were sent to take it. Odysseus disguised himself as a beggar and slipped through the gates in the dead of night. Inside he was recognized, not by an enemy, but by Helen, the very woman whose face had launched the entire war, who quietly showed him exactly where the statue stood. Odysseus and Diomedes carried it out together under cover of darkness, and some accounts even whisper that Odysseus considered leaving his own partner behind on the walk back, wanting the glory of the theft for himself alone. By the time the wooden horse was built, wheeled to the gates, and welcomed inside by a city celebrating what it believed was victory, Troy had already lost. The statue was gone. The protection it promised had already been carried out through a secret passage weeks before the first Greek soldier ever climbed out of that horse's belly. The horse gets the songs, the Palladium gets a footnote, but the truth buried underneath 10 years of siege and one very famous horse is simpler than the legend allows. Troy did not fall to a trick. It fell the moment two men decided a single statue mattered more than the war fought around it, and were right. Like Troy, the next prize on this list also looked like a triumph from the outside. And like Troy, no one asked what it actually cost. The Golden Fleece began as an act of rescue. A flying ram, sent by a mother desperate to save her children from being offered up to the gods, carried Phrixus and his sister Helle through the sky towards safety. Helle didn't survive the flight. She fell into the sea below, and that stretch of water still carries her name. Phrixus reached land, sacrificed the ram out of gratitude, and hung its golden fleece in a sacred grove, guarded from then on by a serpent that never once closed its eyes. Generations later, a king named Peleus sent his nephew Jason to retrieve that fleece. Not as an honor, but as a task Peleus fully expected would kill him. Jason succeeded, but only because King Aeetes' own daughter, Medea, chose him over her father, drugging the serpent, guiding Jason to the fleece with her own hands, giving up everything she had ever known to help a stranger take her family's treasure. Getting away wasn't simple. Her father's fleet gave chase, closing the distance fast enough that escape looked impossible, until Medea made a choice no version of this story softens. Her own younger brother did not survive that voyage home, and his loss was what finally slowed her father down enough to let the Argo escape. Jason returned to Greece holding the fleece over his head like a triumph. And it was won, just not a clean one. Every quest that looks like victory asks the same question underneath. Who wanted it badly enough to pay for it with someone else's blood? For Jason, that was never really a question. For Medea, it was the whole of her life, sailing away in a stranger's ship, and she paid for it anyway. And the last object on this list never cursed anyone at all. It only ever showed people exactly what they already were. You and your crew have survived 10 years of war and years more lost at sea, and when a woman on a quiet island invites you in for food and wine, it feels like the first kindness anyone has offered you in longer than you can count. Her name is Circe. She is a sorceress, daughter of the sun god Helios, and she has lived alone on this island long enough to know exactly what kind of men wash up on her shore. You eat, you drink. And then her wand touches your shoulder, and your body folds downward into something with a snout and hooves and no words left to protest with. Around you, your crewmates are already grunting inside a wooden pen, and none of you can explain to anyone what just happened. Only your captain is spared. He carries a strange root a god pressed into his hand before he ever reached this island, and when Circe's wand touches him, nothing happens at all. No transformation, nothing to reveal. Which raises the question no one on this island wants to answer out loud. Why did the wand work on all of you and not on him? Circe never claimed her magic invented new men out of old sailors. She only ever gave each body the shape that matched what was already sitting inside it, and no one on that ship could prove her wrong. The wand was never the curse. It was a mirror, and every object on this list was exactly the same, never powerful enough to make anyone into something they weren't already becoming, the moment they decided they wanted it badly enough to stop asking whether they should. 7 objects, 7 bloodlines undone, not one curse that worked without a willing hand to pick it up. So here's the question worth sitting with. If a wand, a jar, or a golden apple could show you exactly what you already are, would you still reach for it? Subscribe. The next one is already waiting.